Prosecutors have called it the nation's largest COVID fraud scheme, and its ringleader is due in court May 21st, where she's expected to face decades in federal prison. I'm Matt Sepic, and I cover courts and legal affairs here at NPR News. I've been following all the twists and turns in a case known as Feeding Our Future since it first became public in early 2022. At the center of the scheme was Aimee Bock. Who is she? Bock is 45 years old and grew up in the Twin Cities suburb of Cottage Grove. She has a degree in elementary education and started her career in Duluth as a substitute teacher. She's also worked in childcare. Bock later moved to the nonprofit world. A decade ago, she founded an organization called Feeding Our Future. What is Feeding Our Future, and how did it become synonymous with fraud in Minnesota? The nonprofit oversaw smaller organizations that participated in the Child and Adult Care Food Program and the Summer Food Service Program. Both have been around for decades and are meant to provide meals to kids from low-income communities when school's out. The programs reimburse child care centers and after-school programs for money they spend on snacks and meals. But groups serving that food can't get a dime without a sponsor. That's where Feeding Our Future comes in. In 2018, Bock's organization sponsored a handful of meal distribution sites and collected just over $300,000 from the government. In 2020, when the pandemic began, that figure skyrocketed to almost $43 million. By the next year, with rule changes and lax oversight pumping rocket fuel into Bock's scheme, Feeding Our Future collected nearly $200 million from taxpayers. The Minnesota Department of Education, or MDE, oversees the programs on the state level, but the department allowed the cash to continue flowing despite a parade of red flags. The party ended for Bock and her accomplices in early 2022 after federal agents raided her home, office, and 24 other places connected to the scheme. Later that year, a federal grand jury indicted Bock and dozens of others. 79 people would eventually be charged. The majority are Somali American. Nearly all are U.S. citizens. But when President Donald Trump got wind of the Feeding Our Future scheme in late 2025, he used it and related allegations of Medicaid fraud as a pretext for his wintertime immigration enforcement operation in Minnesota. How did the Feeding Our Future scam go on for so long? Catherine Tyson at the Minnesota Legislative Auditor's Office spent a year and a half figuring that out.
Frankly, MDE wasn't prepared to deal with a fraud like this.
After the grand jury returned those initial indictments, Tyson dug into MDE's records. She found no evidence that any elected officials or state employees had sticky fingers. But Tyson says it was clear that they failed to take action, even though they'd smelled a rat early on.
We saw kind of time and time again where MDE raised concerns about Feeding Our Future's operations or missed opportunities or missed red flags, leading to it not taking the actions that it had the authority to take all along.
Over the last 4 years, 59 defendants pleaded guilty. Jurors at a 2024 trial convicted 5 others. Aimee Bock went to trial in early 2025. Over 5 weeks, restaurant owners who pleaded guilty and cooperated testified that Bock forced them to pay kickbacks so they could continue raking in cash with their own phony meal distribution sites. Prosecutors showed jurors check after 7-figure check, all drawn from the Feeding Our Future bank account. Bock had signed every single one. The jury also saw stacks of handwritten meal count sheets where site operators claimed to have served thousands of children a day. On a split screen, prosecutors displayed surveillance images of sleepy storefronts. St. Paul boxing gym owner Cereso Fort, a prosecution witness who had nothing to do with the scam, told jurors that he was floored when he found out that Bock's organization had claimed to have served 2,500 daily meals from his business. Ben Stayberg, a bartender, testified that he was just as flabbergasted to see his name listed as Feeding Our Future's board president and his signature forged on official documents. What has Aimee Bock said about all this? Against the advice of her attorney, Bock also took the stand at her trial. She tried to portray Feeding Our Future as an upstanding outfit victimized by grifters on her payroll. Bock did admit there was millions of dollars worth of fraud in the child nutrition programs, but she denied knowing about it and said she even cut off payments to some meal sites and vendors. Jurors didn't buy it. They convicted Bock and her co-defendant Salim Saeed on all charges.
People hate fraud. We detest fraud. We hate people cheating, right? Where you are not just stealing, you're betraying our trust.
The scam went on for a long time, so it had to be pretty sophisticated, right? No, it wasn't. Bill Black is a white-collar criminologist at the University of Minnesota Law School. In the 1980s, he was a banking regulator, and his work led to the conviction of hundreds of people connected to the savings and loan debacle. Black knows a lot about complex fraud schemes at banks and corporations. He says the Feeding Our Future fraudsters were rank amateurs.
You don't need super sophisticated accounting or tax analytics and such. This is people create fake documents. And the fake documents won't stand up to even, 5 minutes of inquiry.
Bock herself stole about $1.9 million, much of it through her then-boyfriend's contracting company. The two rented high-end sports cars in Las Vegas and bought jewelry and other luxury items. But Bock didn't spend as big as some of her co-defendants, who bought vehicles, homes, and even property overseas. FBI agents and forensic accountants spent a lot of time following the money. Black says they unraveled the scheme using basic police work.
They have the expertise to interview people and ask the questions and document the answers. And here, it fell apart instantly if you ask questions.
At around $300 million, federal prosecutors say the Feeding Our Future case is the nation's largest COVID-era fraud. But Black notes that it pales in comparison to the trillions lost in the 2008 financial crisis. Criminal prosecutions for mortgage fraud then were few and far between, and only one banker went to prison. While the Trump administration has focused its attention heavily on fraud here in Minnesota and other Democratic-led states, the president has granted pardons or commutations during his first and second terms to more than 70 people convicted of the very same crimes. They include nursing home magnate Philippus Formas, who was sentenced to 20 years in prison for a $1.3 billion Medicare and Medicaid scam. The administration has also sacked or pushed out 21 inspectors general, the federal government's fraud watchdogs. What's been the fallout in Minnesota? While Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, was not implicated, the Feeding Our Future scheme and an estimated $9 billion in Medicaid fraud happened on his watch. Republicans, including President Trump, hammered Walz. The fraud scandal played a key role in his decision not to seek a third term.
Every minute that I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who want to prey on our differences.
After the auditor's report, the state education department hired a general counsel, and state lawmakers set up an inspector general's office within the department. And in May, legislators passed and Walz signed a measure creating a new independent fraud watchdog office that has the power to review payments for public programs. The Feeding Our Future case led investigators to a related Medicaid scheme believed to be much larger. At a December news conference, then Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson revealed his eye-popping estimate, $9 billion.
The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial-scale fraud.
The feds charged 15 people for Medicaid fraud. A half dozen pleaded guilty, but the remaining cases are moving slowly, and it's unclear if any other people could face charges. That's because Thompson and his team quit the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office. They were among more than a dozen people who resigned in protest over how the Justice Department responded to the January killings by federal agents of Renee Good and Alex Preddy during the immigration operation that President Trump began in no small part because of the fraud that they spent years investigating. Is Bock's sentencing the end of the Feeding Our Future story? Not quite. 6 defendants' cases are still pending, not including the 4 who fled the country. A number of others, including Salim Saeed, are expected to be sentenced over the summer. So far, Judge Nancy Brazel has handed down sentences ranging from a year or two of probation for the bit players to 17 and 28 years in prison for other leaders. A few months ago, Bock, in an apparent last-ditch attempt to deflect blame and garner public sympathy, allegedly directed her adult sons to send confidential court documents to elected officials and news reporters, including me. Using the pseudonym Daisy Hill, the sender claimed that, quote, Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, and the Minnesota Department of Education intentionally set Feeding Our Future and Aimee Bock up as a scapegoat, and that Bock tried to stop fraud. Judge Brazel ordered Bock's attorney to prevent his client from accessing her case files from jail. And finally, one of the questions I get most often: did the government recover any of the stolen money? Brazel has been ordering the defendants to repay the cash they stole. In April, Yusuf Bashir Ali brought a $30,000 check to his sentencing hearing as a down payment on his $278,000 in restitution. 2 years ago, the judge allowed another defendant, Laban Alishire, to go to Kenya to sell property he bought during the scam. Alishire returned, and his sentencing hearing is set for late June. It's unclear how much restitution the defendants have paid so far. Prosecutors have said the government has clawed back an estimated $60 to $70 million in assets. But much of the money is gone for good because defendants laundered millions through foreign real estate transactions. We'll have more coverage of this case and other stories, so make sure you're subscribed to NPR News on YouTube and following NPR News on social to stay up to date with the latest.